Imagine this. For 143 days, you don't miss. Every morning, the alarm rings, and you get up. You train. You eat exactly what you planned. You read. You work. You become someone your past self would barely recognize. People start asking what changed. They call you disciplined, focused, relentless. Then, one morning, you wake up 40 minutes late. You miss the gym. You tell yourself, it's only one day. That afternoon, you order food instead of cooking. The next morning, you hit snooze. Again. 3 days later, you're scrolling through your phone, wondering how you lost everything you spent months building. How can one missed workout destroy 143 days of progress? It can't. But your mind can convince you that it did. And that's exactly where most people lose. Not because they lack discipline, but because they've built a version of discipline that was designed to collapse. Today we're going to expose one of the biggest lies in self-improvement, the belief that perfect discipline is the answer. Because sometimes, the thing destroying your progress isn't your lack of discipline. It's your obsession with never failing.
We live in a world that worships streaks. 30 days, 100 days, a year without missing. Social media has turned consistency into performance. People don't post their recovery days. They post the calendar filled with green check marks, the morning routine, the perfectly organized desk, the color-coded planner, the six-pack, the ice bath, the protein shake. Everything looks effortless. Everything looks perfect. And without realizing it, you begin chasing perfection instead of progress. At first, it feels motivating. You convince yourself that this time, you'll never miss. Never eat badly, never lose focus, never procrastinate, never fall behind. But perfection has a hidden cost. Because perfection isn't flexible, it's fragile. Imagine holding a sheet of glass. As long as nothing touches it, it's beautiful, clean, flawless. But the moment enough pressure is applied, it doesn't bend, it shatters. That's exactly how perfectionism works. Not just in fitness, in business, in studying, in relationships, even in happiness. You create rules that leave no room for being human. Then one mistake feels like proof that you've become the person you promised you'd never be again. The strange part is that the mistake wasn't the real problem. The meaning you attached to it was. You didn't just miss the gym. You told yourself, I've ruined my streak. You didn't just eat one unhealthy meal. You decided, today's already wasted. You didn't just miss one day of studying. You started believing, maybe I'm not disciplined after all. And in that moment, your identity begins to crack. Not because reality changed, but because your story did. The most dangerous lies aren't the ones other people tell you. They're the ones you quietly repeat to yourself after one imperfect day. What if I told you? There's a name for what just happened. Psychologists call it all or nothing thinking. It's one of the most common cognitive distortions in the human mind. A cognitive distortion is simply a mistake your brain makes while interpreting reality. And this one is devastating, because it convinces you that if something isn't perfect, it's worthless. You don't just think in shades of black and white, you begin living in them. You either had a perfect day, or you had a terrible one. You either followed your routine exactly, or you failed. You either ate perfectly, or you've ruined your diet. You either worked for 8 hours, or today was wasted. Reality doesn't work like that, but your brain often does. Think about a student preparing for an exam. They've studied every evening for 3 weeks. One night, they're exhausted. They decide to skip a single study session. Instead of saying, I'll continue tomorrow, they think, I've already broken the streak. Tomorrow becomes next week. The books stay closed.
Not because they became lazy overnight, because their brain quietly changed the story. The exact same thing happens with diets. Someone eats clean for an entire month. Then one afternoon, they eat a slice of cake. Logically, it's insignificant. One slice changes almost nothing. But mentally, it becomes permission. I've already ruined today. Then comes the pizza, the crisps, the soda, the binge. Not because of the cake, because of the belief that the cake meant failure. One decision became an identity. This is what psychologists sometimes call the what the hell effect. One mistake creates guilt. Guilt creates abandonment. Abandonment creates more mistakes. And every new mistake becomes evidence that the original belief was true. See, I knew I wasn't disciplined. It's a vicious cycle. But here's the part nobody talks about. The first mistake was never the thing that hurt you. It was the judgment that followed. Because your brain isn't only recording your actions, it's constantly creating stories about what those actions mean. Miss one workout, I'm losing my discipline. Miss one deadline, I'm unreliable. Get rejected, I'm not good enough. We rarely suffer because of reality itself. We suffer because of the meaning we attach to reality. Imagine two people, both miss the gym. The first person says, I failed. The second person says, I'll be back tomorrow. The event was identical. The interpretation wasn't. One loses momentum, the other barely notices. Because resilient people don't protect perfect routines. They protect their identity. They understand something most people don't. Consistency isn't about never falling. It's about never allowing one fall to rewrite who you believe you are. So, if perfection isn't the answer, what is? How do the world's best performers stay consistent for years without becoming prisoners of impossible standards? The answer isn't more discipline. It's a completely different relationship with discipline itself.
For years, we've been sold the same idea. The strongest people never stop. No days off, no excuses, no weakness. It's a philosophy that sounds powerful. Until you look at the people who actually perform at the highest level. Olympic athletes don't train at maximum intensity every single day. Professional bodybuilders schedule deload weeks. Elite chess players step away from the board. Special forces rotate soldiers after prolonged missions. Even the human heart rests. Between every beat, there's a pause. Without that pause, there is no next beat. Nature itself doesn't believe in endless output. So why do we expect it from ourselves? The problem isn't that you're weak. The problem is that you're trying to outperform biology. Every system designed to last works in cycles. The seasons change. The tide comes in, then goes out. Your muscles grow while you recover. Your brain forms memories while you sleep. Everything in nature alternates between effort and restoration. Everything, except the expectations we've placed on ourselves. We've convinced ourselves that slowing down means falling behind. But sometimes, slowing down is exactly what keeps you moving forward. Think about someone climbing a mountain. If they sprint from the bottom, they'll feel unstoppable for a while. Then their breathing changes. Their legs become heavy. Their pace collapses. Not because they weren't capable, because they tried to conquer a marathon like it was a sprint. Life works the same way. Ambition without recovery becomes exhaustion. Discipline without flexibility becomes a prison. Perfection without compassion becomes self-destruction. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline means forcing yourself, no matter what. But real discipline isn't about ignoring reality. It's about responding to reality wisely. Sometimes discipline means waking up at 5. Sometimes discipline means sleeping another hour.
because your body has reached its limit. Sometimes discipline means saying no. Sometimes it means saying yes to recovery. Not because you've given up, because you're protecting tomorrow. The greatest performers aren't obsessed with intensity. They're obsessed with sustainability. Because they understand a truth that most people learn too late. Burnout doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens quietly. One ignored warning sign. One skipped meal. One sleepless night. One more hour. One more task. One more promise that you'll rest later. Until one day, your body makes the decision for you. And by then, recovery isn't optional. It's unavoidable. The irony is almost cruel. The people who fear slowing down the most are usually the ones who end up stopping completely. Not because they lacked ambition, because they never built a system that could survive ambition. So maybe the goal was never to become someone who never breaks. Maybe the goal is to become someone who knows exactly how to bend without losing who they are. Because the strongest trees aren't the ones that never move. They're the ones that survive the storm.
Maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, how can I become more disciplined? Maybe we should ask, how can I stay disciplined for the next 10 years? Those are two completely different problems. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. Many people can do it for a month. Some can even survive a year. But very few people build a system they can carry for decades, because they confuse intensity with sustainability. Imagine two people starting the exact same journey. The first one attacks every day like it's a war. 4-hour morning routines, no social life, perfect diet, perfect sleep, perfect schedule, every minute planned, every mistake punished. At first, they look unstoppable. The second person looks almost average. They wake up at a consistent time. They train, they work, they rest. They leave room for birthdays, family dinners, unexpected setbacks. Some days are exceptional. Some days are simply enough. If you watched them for 1 month, you'd probably bet on the first person. If you watched them for 10 years, you'd probably bet on the second. Because success doesn't usually belong to the most intense person. It belongs to the one who stayed in the game. There's something powerful about giving yourself permission to be imperfect, without giving yourself permission to quit. That's the difference. One missed workout? Accept it. Train tomorrow. One bad meal? Accept it. Eat well at dinner. A terrible day at work? Accept it. Show up again in the morning. The goal isn't to avoid failure. The goal is to make failure too small to stop you. Think of discipline like steering a ship across the ocean. The captain doesn't panic every time a wave pushes the ship off course. He adjusts, again, and again, and again. Thousands of tiny corrections, not one perfect line. That's how ships reach continents. That's how people reach impossible goals. Not because they never drifted, but because they always corrected. Maybe that's what discipline really is. Not punishment, not suffering, not proving how much pain you can tolerate. Discipline is simply the ability to return. Return after failure. Return after doubt. Return after disappointment. Return after the days when you don't recognize yourself. Anyone can start. The rare people are the ones who come back, every single time. And maybe that's why perfection was never the goal. Perfection has an ending. Growth doesn't. Let's go back to the person who missed one workout. Months ago, they believed that one mistake erased everything. Today, they miss another workout. But something is different. There's no guilt, no panic, no dramatic speech. They simply tie their shoes,
the next morning. Because they finally understand something that took years to learn. A missed day doesn't destroy discipline. Quitting does. For most of your life, you've probably treated discipline like a test. Pass or fail. Win or lose. Perfect or worthless. But life has never worked that way. Life has always rewarded the people who quietly returned. The writer who opened the laptop again. The student who picked the book back up. The athlete who trained after a bad week. The entrepreneur who built again after losing everything. History doesn't remember them because they were perfect. History remembers them because they refused to stay down. Maybe that's the real secret. Not becoming someone who never falls, becoming someone who never builds their identity around falling. Because your identity isn't decided on your worst day. It's decided by what you repeatedly choose after your worst day. One day, you'll stop counting streaks. You'll stop chasing perfection. You'll stop fearing mistakes. And when that day comes, you'll discover something strange. Discipline becomes quieter. It no longer needs to prove itself. It simply becomes who you are. The strongest people aren't those who never break their routine. They're the ones who never let a broken routine break them. Mind of influence.